Hi, part two of Labor and Capital. Hey, it's Mr. H. How you guys doing today? Well, we introduced you to John Rockefeller last time. Now, let's tell you who this guy is. Okay, another big industrialist like our friend Carnegie, except he's from, Cleveland. Boo hiss, right? Steelers, Browns. Apparently it's a rivalry again. Well, Carnegie made his money on steel. Rockefeller's going to do it with oil. Just like your friend Carnegie, he's really big into cost cutting and creates Standard Oil Trust. Why is oil so important? Because you need oil for everything. Oil is what you need to transport stuff. You need gasoline, you get it from oil. You need it for machinery, you need it for the trains because you know how important the trains are. So he has got like the biggest oil reserve in the entire country. Now, monopolies are nothing new. They've been around forever, right? Even ancient Greece had monopolies on grains and stuff. But monopolies tended to be kind of a local phenomenon or even regional. This is the first time it's become a national problem. Now, it doesn't mean Rockefeller's evil. Just because he's from Cleveland doesn't make him evil. He's just trying to make money. Remember, nobody knows what the rules are. Never had a monopoly this big before. So we have to adjust for the times, and here we come with the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. You take a huge monopoly, one company, and they're going to break it up into several smaller companies. They still use the Sherman Antitrust Act. So Rockefeller's not happy about it, but hey, sometimes you need the government to step in. It's just the way it goes sometimes. Don't worry about John Rockefeller. He's got his money. He's doing fine, and he's finding ways to cut costs, and, people get upset about the low wages. Welcome to the Industrial Revolution. All righty. But now, there's been a lot of doom and gloom so far here about the late 19th century industrialization. Let's talk about some great stuff here. The light bulb. Thomas Edison didn't invent it, but he perfected it. What's so great about a light bulb? Well, it pushes back the night. Right? You don't have to work by candlelight anymore. You have light bulbs. You can actually stay up past 8, 9 o'clock. Now people stay up to about 10, 11 most of the time. I'm pretty sure you guys have gone way beyond midnight playing Fortnite or whatever. But the light bulb is what makes this possible, right? Light bulbs push back the night. You can work anytime now. The canning industry takes off. Now you can eat vegetables and stuff out of a can. Things don't rot on you immediately. I mean, it will rot in the can eventually, but it lasts a little bit longer. Flour milling, same situation here. You can make a lot more flour, make a lot more bread. Starvation is something that's becoming a thing of the past. And of course, we talked about petroleum and how important that is in the late 19th century and even today. How about this here? Refrigerated meat railroad cars. Oh, now you're talking, right? Get those great steaks of Chicago and Kansas City. You live in New York, live over in Pittsburgh. It'll get to you because it's refrigerated. Now we've got Wendy's and McDonald's. Same concept. Refrigerated meat. Gustav Swift, a Swift company. They're the guys who pioneered that thing. And of course, like I told you, there's the company called Swift Meats, still around. Sewing machines are very popular. We talked about that earlier. Not only does everyone want a sewing machines are great for the clothing industry. They start making what they call ready-to-wear clothes. So instead of mom making all your clothes for you all the time, you can go out to the store and there's clothes waiting for you. Some people still like to make their own clothes. Telephones. Oh, here we go. Technology, revolution in communication. We've gone from shouting at people to scrolls and delivering, from telegraphs. Now we got the telephone. You can actually hear somebody's voice immediately. You're in New York, you call somebody in San Diego, and they hear you immediately. Alexander Graham Bell's the guy we have to thank for that. And of course, we can get after telephones. Yeah, get your cell phones. That's a little bit further down the road. But hey, everything builds on something else, right? And here's Menlo Park, New Jersey, becomes the first research lab. All sorts of new technology. A lot of it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Let's talk about advertising. That's the not so good thing that comes out of all this. Ignore this page number. Now, advertising has been around forever. You see it on the Roman Colosseum walls. You see it near the Acropolis in Athens. And of course, advertising really helps out in the late 19th century because it provides a lot of jobs. Somebody's got to design the advertising. Usually you put posters up. That's how you did it in the late 19th century. So somebody's got to design the poster. Somebody's got to get the paint and the ink for it. Somebody's got to put it up someplace. And it's everywhere. Advertising. Every place you go, you got it. And of course, we still have advertising today, too. It's just called pop-ups. Same idea. Everywhere you go, there's advertising. Well, how is you going to find out about these great goods you need to live? Right? That's how you do it. Now, industrialization has been mainly a northern phenomenon, northeast, a little bit into the Midwest. What's going on down south? Well, that's where you got the fuel for industrialization. It kind of comes from there. Timber, big timber reserves in the south. You don't believe me? Look around. See nothing but pine trees. We have coal deposits. That's in the Appalachians, usually on the other side, the Tennessee side, West Virginia, Tennessee, North Georgia, Alabama. But that stuff gets dug out and they send it to Pittsburgh and other places like that for the steel industry. Eventually, they create their own steel industry in Birmingham, Alabama, a bit closer, call it Pittsburgh to the south. Another another good thing about opening a business in the South back then, not many taxes. In fact, some places had no taxes. So the good news is you got to keep most of your profits. The bad news is a lot of illiteracy in the South at the time. Freed slaves, and of course, a lot of the white population was kind of illiterate or functionally illiterate. And the problem is when you have illiterate people, they don't really make very good workers because they don't really know what to do. If you can read the instruction manual. If you can read the instruction manual, you can do anything. But in order to read, you need a school. How do you pay for school? Through taxes. No taxes, no school. Bit of a problem. Now, there's also something else that's eating up Southern budgets at the time. Southern state budgets, a large percentage goes to something. What do you think that might be? We're talking 1870, 1880. Think about it. All right, you ready? Confederate pensions. Yeah, and you're wondering, why are they paying out Confederate pensions? Well, that was part of the deal that ended the Civil War, right? We wanted to let the Confederacy off the hook so we don't have refighting the same war every generation. So, they basically let everyone off the hook and they put a lot of Confederate officers on pensions. Now, the problem with the pensions is that, corruption seeped its way in and you had people who weren't even in the war trying to get the pensions because they get the same name as their father. And, it's the late 19th century. It's kind of hard to trace this stuff sometimes. And I still remember a story about a guy in 1890 getting a pension for fighting at Gettysburg in 1863, and it turns out he was born in 1865. See the problem? So they had to go through these pensions one by one and find out what's legit and what's not. And even the legitimate ones, like I said, is money you spend on a pension you can't use to build a school. Well, so we're working on it, right? Let's talk about mass production again. I've already mentioned it, but I feel it's pretty important. Now, mass production squeezes out workshops in favor of factories. Here's our friend Leonard Schumacher. Schumacher, German for shoemaker. Perfect example, shoes. I said earlier a skilled craftsman could make a pair of shoes in a day, sometimes even two. And they're really nice shoes, and they're kind of expensive. But now that you get mass production, you don't need craftsmanship anymore. You got everybody does one small piece of it. Like I said, someone puts on the heel, someone strings the shoe, put the laces, someone sews the tongue in there. So you don't need experienced craftsmen anymore. And our friend Leonard, who can produce one or two pairs of shoes a day, even though they're nice shoes, is going to get swamped because our factory is pumping out like 100 every day, or maybe even 100 an hour if you really know what you're doing. And they're a lot cheaper. I make a lot more. And before you know it, Leonard's shop over there has to close and he's working on the assembly line next to you. Because anybody can work on an assembly line. It's a small, minor task. You don't need to know how to make shoes to work on a shoe assembly line. Just know how to do your one small task. 35% of shoemakers are women in 1900. See, more and more women are entering the workforce. But industrialized workplaces in the late 19th century, not a lot of fun. And you know about child labor already. So, very tough to work in a factory in the late 1900s. But hey, it's better than not having a job, right? Now, women are making it work. I told you, women and children. There's no child labor law or anything like that. In 1870, 13% of women are in the workforce. Usually it's domestic servants. Why domestic servants? That's what they know best, right? They've been doing that their whole life. Now they start moving into the food processing and garment industries. Again, things they generally have some kind of experience with, maybe not so much with canning, but you show somebody how to put something in a can, they figure it out pretty fast. Educated women are going into typing pools and they're becoming telephone operators. Right. Why typing pools? Smaller hands, don't get their fingers stuck in the keyboard. Yep, I know that, speaking from personal experience. And telephone operators, think about it. Get on the phone, you call the operator. Hello, how may I help you? Or, hey, how may I help you? How you doing? Which one do you want to hear? Anyway, ladies are making $6 to $8 a day, big money back then. 20% of women are typists and telephone operators in the beginning, and that number will skyrocket to like 99.9. Now, here's a big question. Industrialization, is it the American dream or is it the American nightmare? Horatio Alger writes a book called Ragged Dick. That's a guy's name, Richard, right? 1867 extols the virtues of hard work leading to success. Rags to riches. You ever hear that saying? Here you are. Rags to riches. Dick has nothing, works hard, becomes successful. Rags to riches. Now, Mark Twain, you've heard of him, has an opposite view. He sees the whole thing as being rigged for the rich who lie and cheat their way into success. And yeah, some of that does happen. There's no way around that. But you remember, nobody knows what the rules are exactly. Remember, it's where the Sherman Antitrust Act comes from. These companies get so big, no one's ever had to deal with a company this big before. Now, some people are concerned that it's the beginning of some kind of an American nobility. 1883, Thomas Maguire shows up in front of the Senate and says, you need $10,000 to start a business. Who has that kind of money? Of course, $10,000 back then is a lot more money, but, $10,000 a lot of money now, too. If you hand it to me, I won't say no. 95% of industrial leaders in this period are either middle class or rich, so it looks like they're already up on the start line when no one else can get there, because as human nature dictates, you do really well, you hand it off to your children, so it ends up becoming hereditary. So you're not sure who's right, Mark Twain or Horatio Alger. Makes you wonder sometimes. Now, immigration in the 1890s becomes a bit of a hot button issue. It always is, even today. If there's one thing I tell you about United States immigration history, it seems to change about every 30 years. Now, in the beginning, most of the American immigration came from the UK, Ireland. Around the Civil War, antebellum era, I started getting a lot more come from Germany and Scandinavia. 1890s, still coming from Scandinavia, a lot of those people end up in the Minnesota, Dakota areas. But now you're starting to get people from different parts of the world. On the Pacific coast, a lot of people from China showing up. You're getting people from Eastern Europe in the 1890s, coming out of the Mediterranean, Italy, Greece, some of Mr. H's people there, southern Spain, even the Middle East. So a lot of people are worried about these immigrants because, well, it's not like something they've ever seen before. Because, like I said, these are vastly different cultures. But if there's one thing you learn about American immigration, like I said, is every 30 years a wave tends to change. And about the third generation, they get completely absorbed. So we get people who say, "Che, my name is Tassos," followed by, "Hey, how you doing?" And by generation 3, it's, "Hey, man, want to play Xbox?" So generally, it's how it works. But another concern is that you've got all these people looking for work, right? Americans themselves, and now you've got more competition with more immigration coming in. We have an American who's used to working for 25 cents a day, or maybe get undercut by another American for 20 cents, and then you've got people coming from China or Russia or Greece someplace, and they're working for a dime a day, and they think that's awesome because they had nothing else. That's where all the resentment and the anger and everything begins to happen. You start getting nationalist and even racial conflict on occasion. Now, labor issues in the late 19th century, they can get pretty nasty. Working conditions are terrible, right? People get burned, people get killed, you get your fingers ripped off. There's no such thing as workman comp back then. And quite naturally, people working tend to get upset about it. Some factory owners actually try to help because they figure, well, happy worker's a productive worker. Plus, it's also just human. You can't do that to a fellow human being, put them in those kind of conditions. But, not everyone's that nice. That's why you have labor unions. The workers start to organize. How do we get the management to make the conditions not so horrible? How do we get them to pay us a bit more? So the labor unions are beginning. Here's the National Labor Union, 1869, regarded as perhaps the first one. Got the Knights of Labor over here. The American Federation of Labor, the AFL, Sam Gompers runs that. Hey, look at this. No women allowed in there until 1894. Yeah, why are they not allowing women? I don't know. They're becoming a bigger and bigger part of the workforce. Hey, they want to get paid too, right? Now, sometimes the management will listen, sometimes they don't. And if they don't listen, what can labor do? Well, you can refuse to work, go on strike. They sometimes will try to fire everybody and bring in other people. They call them scabs, and you get fights between the workers and the scabs. They bring in the police, and next thing you know, the whole thing gets really nasty. Late 19th century, man, no holds back. People come after you with their fists. That's how they negotiate back then. Like to think we've learned something. Baltimore and Ohio Railroad strike in 1877 got really nasty. 30 some odd people killed over there. The Haymarket riot in Chicago, weirdly enough, started off as a peaceful protest. Someone threw a bomb at the cops and killed 7 of them. Cops go bonkers, and Chicago is in complete anarchy for 3 days. Some things don't change. And of course, the Homestead, Pennsylvania strike of 1892, right there in Pittsburgh, got a big memorial to it. 7 people died there. They're your friend, Carnegie Steel Company, trying to make everybody forget about it by building a museum, right? In 1894, we got the Pullman strike. Now, that one was a big one. That one affected the railroads. You know how important the railroads are. If the railroads aren't working, lots of problems happen. They actually called the army out on that one to try to force people back to work, fix bayonets and stick it in their face kind of thing. So, labor strikes in the late 19th century get really nasty. Communism begins to, flourish in this kind of an environment, Marxism and such. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Don't worry about Mother Jones so much. Now, as you can tell, the late 19th century can get kind of tough sometimes, but as bad as it gets, it provides a base for the way we live today. Remember, not everyone's evil, not everyone's trying to, torture and oppress the workers, though some people will. Like I said, it's a case of people really not knowing what the rules are yet, and now we have monopolies that need to be broken up, and we're trying to get a fair deal between management where they can make some money and labor where they can make some money and, be reasonably certain they're going home that night. All right, that rounds out chapter number 16. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you later.